Hello everybody, my name's Nathan, and now that the Steam Summer Sale is on for 2016, I've spent some time looking at the discounts and picking out a good mix of games that I think might be worth picking up. First though, a quick disclaimer before we get started: I will only recommend games that I've played, and we only have a finite amount of time, so I can't go through every good deal, but what follows will be some of my favourites. Now, the video is going to be broken up into 3 segments: games under £5, games under £10, and others to watch, and I'll include the dollar values as well, just in case you're watching in the US. So without further ado, let's start with games under £5. And with all the post-E3 hype surrounding Dishonored 2, what better place to start than with the original Dishonored? Playing as Corvo, you must try to rescue the young Empress Emily Coldwin from her kidnappers, and in doing so clear your name for the murder of her mother. Coming in at £3.99 or $4.99, Dishonored offers a superb single-player experience, with each mission having multiple ways to achieve your objective and a truly interesting world. I feel that the price tag for this one is absolutely tiny compared to the amount of enjoyment that the game offers. I love the aesthetic of Dishonored, and a mix of stealth, action and strong game mechanics, such as the ability to blink around enemies, allows for fluid and exciting gameplay, and even if you don't care about the story of the game, isn't it always fun to just stealth kill a few guards? Next up we have XCOM Enemy Unknown, the predecessor to the superb XCOM 2. The game revolves around you commanding an elite force of operatives in an attempt to repel an alien invasion. In order to do that, you're forced to make decisions, including which missions to take, what upgrades to give your soldiers, and my personal favourite, what research to take on, as you need to evolve your technology to keep up with the aliens. The combat is turn-based and quite strategic, which might put some people off, but once you get the hang of the cover and Overwatch mechanics, you're pretty much set, and a cast of interesting alien variations and a real sense of accomplishment after a mission successfully completed fully justifies the £3.74 or $7.99 asking price. And while I still personally prefer XCOM 2, Enemy Unknown is a very close second place. So from turn-based combat to a brutal, realistic first-person shooter, we come to Insurgency. Now yes, this is a modern military shooter, and my god aren't we all sick of those. But this one comes with the twist of realism. If you get shot in the head, you will die, and that lends itself to a much more cautious style of gameplay. Now there are a couple of reasons to maybe think twice on this one. Firstly, there's no real single player mode to speak of, and secondly, the game is currently being remade in the Unreal 4 engine. But even so, this version of the game has a lot to offer. The gun mechanics feel solid, and the ridiculously low time to kill adds a true sense of tension, which makes those clutch moments all the sweeter. Insurgency is also one of the few shooters that really nails night combat. I mean, if you're not using the night vision goggles or a flashlight, you truly cannot see. And there are a lot of people that will love that style of gameplay. Coming in at £3.29 or $4.49, I think that Insurgency is a steal, particularly if you can get a group of friends to play alongside you. Moving on, next up is the Stanley Parable, and I'm not going to say too much on this one because it's a game that you really need to experience for yourself. But to give you a quick idea of what's going on, the Stanley Parable is rare in that it's a walking simulator that is truly fun. The gameplay you're seeing in the background right now will not do the game justice, as it's all about the decisions you make and the hilarious narrator. For a mere £1.99 or $2.99, the Stanley Parable is an experience that I feel is worth having. Now we move on to the only game on this list that I didn't actually play on PC, and therefore I can't comment on how well it performs, but from my time with playing this on PS4, I can tell you that Outlast might just be the scariest game I've ever played. Set in a mental asylum and with no means of self-defense, you'll be forced to run, hide, and even to a certain extent film the monstrosities that will try and most likely succeed in making you scream like a 5-year-old. Now, I personally hate the horror genre mainly because I'm a total coward, but I can tell when a game is strong in the genre, and Outlast definitely is that. It's also the only game on this list that I didn't re-download to get new footage for, as I didn't think my heart could take it. So if you're one of those weird people who likes to be absolutely terrified and you have £3.74 or $4.99 burning a hole in your pocket, then Outlast might just be for you. And finally, in the under £5 category, I've gone for Skyrim. Now, I'm not going to talk too long about this one because I think that almost everybody who would have been interested in Skyrim will have already played it. I think the only people who might be tempted will be former console players who've made the switch to PC and want to experience the game in all its glory, mods and all. The fantasy open world RPG is, in my opinion, one of the best games of its generation, and while it's starting to look a tad dated now, at £4.99 or $9.99, if I hadn't already got Skyrim on PC, I'd definitely be picking it up now. Right, into the games under £10 category, we're starting off with one of the best shooters of the past few years, Wolfenstein: The New Order. Set in an alt history world where the Nazis won World War II, your character BJ Blazkowicz will become the main player in the resistance movement. This game is just insane. I mean, you'll literally go to the moon to shoot Nazis. And for a lot of people, that will be enough to justify its £7.49 or $9.99 price tag on its own. If it's not enough for you though, I can add that it's fascinating to see what's been done with the world and how the developers have depicted their vision of a permanent Nazi rule. And perhaps above and beyond all that, it is incredibly fun to just shoot enemies in Wolfenstein. So if you're looking for a high-octane adventure with a unique cast of characters including my favourite Max Haas, and you fancy yourself as a Nazi-killing superhero, then Wolfenstein: The New Order is definitely worth a look. South Park: The Stick of Truth is up next, and whether or not you're going to like this game relies pretty heavily on whether or not you like the comedy style of the TV show. If you do, then why haven't you played this game already? It's basically like being thrown into an interactive version of the show. The game starts with your character moving to town as the new kid, and you have to choose between the battling forces of the humans led by Cartman and the Drow Elves led by Kyle, as they attempt to take control of the Stick of Truth. The combat system is turn-based and allows the player to direct a fart at their opponents. Yep, like I said, you probably need to enjoy the comedy of the show to fully enjoy the game. Now, with the second installment of the series coming out later this year, I believe it's possible to get this game for free with the pre-order of The Fractured But Whole. But personally, I believe it would be a far better decision to spend the £5.99 or $7.49 on the Stick of Truth, rather than risk £40 on that game being good before it's even come out. If you're the type of person who likes to do a few side quests, there's probably a good 15 hours or so of gameplay in this one, and I think it's one of the best licensed games ever made. And while that might not be saying much, I still really enjoyed my time with the game. Now, I said I was going to put a mix of games on this list so there was something for everyone, and after South Park: The Stick of Truth, you couldn't really get much more of a different game than Democracy 3. Effectively a political simulation, in Democracy 3 you'll have to try and run the country your way while making sure that enough people still like you to vote you back in. Now, as you can probably see from the footage being shown in the background, the graphics are almost non-existent, just a lot of bubbles. But they each indicate an issue within the country and give the information required to see what's causing problems, and that offers you a way to solve those problems. Now, I'm going to use one of the most cop-out sentences ever used by any critic: it's not going to be for everyone. But if you have an interest in real-life politics, then this game offers a fairly decent representation of some of the issues facing countries today, and though it may not be the most flashy game, at £5.69 or $7.49, I think it'll make some people very happy. On to one of the breakout successes of last year then, we've got Rocket League. The combinations of cars and football may sound like a simple concept, but superb physics and the ability to make masterful plays make for one of the most fun experiences in gaming today. With the game largely being based around multiplayer, there may be a concern that the player base will eventually dwindle, but with cross-platform play with the PS4, that shouldn't be a problem for a long time yet. My own experience with the game is that I've turned it on for a quick game at 10 PM and found myself still playing come 3 in the morning. It's one of those games that's just focused purely on having fun, and even if you don't care about football or cars, there's still a good chance that you'll love Rocket League. Coming in at £8.99 or $11.99, one of last year's hits could well be worth a look, and it's even had basketball and ice hockey added to it for free. Next is probably one of the lesser known titles on this list, is Guild of Dungeoneering. This is a game that allows you to send out a hero to a dungeon, build up parts of the dungeon to explore using cards, and fight the monsters within, all in order to get gold and fame for the guild. Guild of Dungeoneering has a great sense of humour and is one of the most surprisingly addictive games I've played. The combat system is card based and is all about countering what your opponent is doing using both magic and physical attacks. One concern I've always had about the game is that you can be totally screwed over before you even start a battle by not having the cards you need, but usually this can be countered by making sure you only take on enemies of the same level as your hero and by gathering the right loot on your way to the fight. On sale currently for £5.49 or $7.49, this game has become one of my relaxation games and I would thoroughly recommend you give it a try. On to the final game in this category, and I've gone for The Wolf Among Us, although you could replace it with almost any other Telltale game, but it just so happens that this one is my favourite. If you've ever played a Telltale game before, you'll know that it's all about decision making within a story, almost like an interactive movie. The Wolf Among Us is set in New York, where a group of fairy tale creatures are being forced to blend in. You play as Bigby Wolf, or the Big Bad Wolf, and as the sheriff, you're tasked with keeping the other fairy tale characters in line and solving a deep underlying mystery at the same time. One of the criticisms always levied at Telltale games is that your decisions don't really matter enough, and while I definitely feel that's true for The Wolf Among Us, I think the strength of the story and the setting are enough to forgive the game for its shortcomings. At £9.49 or $12.49, I think the world and characters created in The Wolf Among Us make it a great game. So we move on to the final section, and these games are going to be a little more pricey, but I still believe they justify the price, and we're going to start with the brilliant The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. This open world adventure is my personal favourite game of 2015, and has up to this point given me 83 hours of monster killing fun. Now granted, I've got both of the expansions for this game, and the footage being shown is actually from one of those, which doesn't come with the base game, but even without those the game is massive. Playing as Geralt, a professional monster killer or witcher, you'll be tasked with saving a friend from the titular Wild Hunt. But if you don't fancy that, you could take on some incredibly interesting side quests, complete monster killing contracts, or just play a few rounds of Gwent, a card game so popular that there's even a standalone version of it coming out later in the year. For the completionists out there, this game will easily give you 60 hours of gameplay, and for everyone else it's got to be at least 40 hours. So for £17.49 or $24.99, I personally think it's well worth it. Next is Rainbow Six Siege. This is a tactical multiplayer shooter where one team is on the attack and the other team is defending. The gunplay is strong and the variation in characters to play is good, but the true strength of the game comes in the tactical approaches that you can take and the mechanics that the game has in place to facilitate them. For example, using a drone to find out the position of your enemies and then blowing up a wall to get line of sight is entirely possible and a very common tactic, which is made possible by the excellent micro-destruction system that the game has in place. Team play is also key, and often you'll want to pick an operator who has a gadget that benefits not just yourself, but your entire team, such as Rook, who will lay down armour for you and your allies to allow them to take 1 or 2 more shots than usual before dropping. Now the game is pretty much purely multiplayer, and that can be an issue for a lot of people, but if you're into that kind of thing, then I think that Rainbow Six Siege is one of the best and most unique multiplayer shooters to come out in recent years. So for £17.29 or $29.99, I think it's not a bad deal. A word of warning though, the Steam download will just launch Uplay, and you'll have to play it through there. So if you hate Uplay, and who could blame you, this might be one to avoid. Almost at the end now, and my final suggestion is Darkest Dungeon. This is a roguelike, turn-based RPG where you take a team of heroes down into horrible places and fight some truly twisted enemies. Now the game is difficult and a lot of the time you'll be forced to make the best of a bad situation, but for me, that only adds to the fun. The thing that sets this game apart for me though is the different character traits that your heroes can gain that can really affect how the game plays out. For example, I've got a whole bunch of heroes who are kleptomaniacs, and as such will keep any treasure they find for themselves. Now, do I want to leave them at home because of that, or should I bring them because they're one of my strongest heroes? That kind of question and decision is what makes for a lot of fun in the game. In reality though, a lot of whether or not you're going to enjoy the game is going to come down to whether or not you enjoy turn-based combat. Although, even if you don't usually enjoy it, the addition of a stress mechanic in this game, whereby heroes can go fully crazy if too much bad stuff is happening, might just set this game apart for you. Currently on sale for £11.39 or $14.99. If you like the sound of what you've heard here, Darkest Dungeon could be a good choice for you. Anyway, that's about it for today. Thanks for making it this far in the video. If you enjoyed it, I'd be very grateful if you'd click that like button down below, leave any recommendations for other great deals in the comments, and subscribe for more like this in the future. Thanks for watching, I've been Nathan, and I'll see you next time.